The man in the top hat. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart racing and my body paralyzed. I couldn't move or scream for help, no matter how hard I tried. I was trapped in my own body, unable to escape the terror that was taking over my senses. As I lay there, helpless and terrified, I saw him, a creepy, pale man with long black hair, jet black eyes, and a sinister smile that revealed razor-sharp teeth. He was dressed in a black suit and a top hat, hovering just inches away from my face, staring at me with an unblinking gaze. I tried to will myself to move, to escape this nightmare, but it was no use. I was trapped in a state of sleep paralysis, unable to do anything but lay there and wait for this monster to do God knows what to me. The man reached out his hand, his long bony fingers and sharp black nails hovering inches away from my throat. I could feel his breath on my skin and the stench of death emanating from his mouth. I closed my eyes and prayed for it to be over, for this nightmare to end. But it didn't. Instead, the man leaned in closer, his sharp teeth bared and his black eyes glinting with malice. He wrapped his hand around my throat and began to choke me, cutting off my ability to breathe. Then he spoke, his voice low and guttural, filled with the kind of evil that could only come from the depths of hell itself. "You can't escape me," he whispered, his breath hot on my skin. "I am the keeper of your nightmares, and I will haunt you until the end of time." And with that, he vanished into the darkness, leaving me alone in the cold embrace of sleep paralysis, haunted by the memory of his twisted face and the sound of his guttural voice. I knew then that I would never truly be able to escape him, and that he would always be there, waiting in the shadows to claim me once again. The unseen hand. As I laid in bed, unable to move or scream, I felt a presence behind me. I tried to turn my head to see what it was, but my body remained frozen in place. Then the whispers began, soft at first, but gradually getting louder. I could hear my name being repeated over and over, growing more frenzied with each repetition. Then I felt a hand on my shoulder. I tried to shake it off, but it only gripped me tighter. Panic started to set in. As the voice became more urgent, I tried to cry out for help, but no sound escaped my lips. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I felt hot breath on the back of my neck. I could sense a figure right behind me, its face inches from mine. I could feel its malevolent energy emanating from its body, and I knew that whatever it wasn't human. I laid there, helpless and terrified, as the whispers continued. I didn't know how much longer I could take it, and I started to pray for the nightmare to end. Suddenly, the hand released me, and the voice went silent. I felt the presence retreat and let out a sigh of relief. I laid there, now able to move again, and realized that I was experiencing sleep paralysis. I feared going back to sleep. I was afraid that the presence would be back, and that next time it might not let me go so easily. I laid there, hoping and praying that I would never experience sleep paralysis again. Story 3. My real story. Hi, I'm Amy, I'm 21, and I will tell you my horror story that I actually lived. When I was younger, I lived in an old apartment that my grandfather and my grandfather built. In this apartment, only people from my family lived in it. There's 3 apartments, the top, the middle, and the bottom. A long time ago, my father and his ex was living in the top apartments. My father never believed in ghost thing. Like that one day, he opened the door of his apartment, and he saw the rocking chair swinging all by itself. And it was in December. I live in Canada, so no windows or door was open, and it happened at a couple of times after that. My father and mother moved together in the middle apartment. More thing happened. We were 6 in a 3-bedroom apartment in my room that I shared with my sister. We had a closet, and in this closet there's a trap to go to the apartment below. And I always been scared of that. And I did know why. One day, my father and his brother condemned this trap. And they didn't want to know why, until my mother told me they condemned this trap, 'cause the brother of my grandmother hanged hisself from this trap, a really long time ago, before my mother and father got together. So keep in mind that my mother never know, or talk, or know what he looked like. One day, the guy from the apartment below called my father saying, "Hey, I know it's late, but can you say to your kids to stop running around? It's so late, and it make a lot of noise." My father said, "I'm sorry, but nobody is in the apartment. Run, we are all out." My father asked him to go check, and when the men go in my apartment, no body was there. And the last thing is that one day I was talking how I didn't like my closet in my old room, and Mother said, "Wanna know something crazy?" She told me that when we lived in this apartment, my mother was seeing a man, but he was not alive. He was half transparent, but he was not scary. He was looking good, always smiling, and we was wearing old clothes from the 80s every time that my mom was alone with me and taking care of me. He was just there looking at me and my mum smiling, but nothing creepy, more like love and joy. One day, my mother talked about that to my grandmother. She was describing the mysterious men to her, and my grandmother turned pale until she said, "Ooh, are describing my brother before he hanged himself in the apartment that we was living in. So can you tell me why he was looking at me smiling and we were wearing noise when we was not there, and why the chair was swinging? All my itself helped me figure it out." Story 4. Stuck in traffic with the devil. I didn't believe in ghosts, the paranormal, the occult, whatever you wish to call it. I didn't believe in any of it, but now I do. I worked part-time at a fast food joint within a service station just off the M6, Britain's largest motorway. I was there for 5 years. The job was cozy and it paid well enough. The hours were mostly fine too. The only downside, the journey. Working on a motorway means that there is a good chance you will get stuck in some form of traffic. This is exactly what happened one evening. I had just finished my shift. It was around 6 p.m., rush hour. Every man and woman wanting to get back home from their daily 9-to-5 jobs. I knew the routine. I knew the risks. I had begged with my supervisor to let me leave an hour earlier or later, but she had told me she couldn't. If I left early, they were understaffed. If I left late, they couldn't pay me. I left at around 6:10 with a sour demeanor. I just wanted to get home, and fast. Surprise, surprise, when 30 minutes later, I found myself slap bang in the middle of a traffic jam. A road accident had been the cause of the hold-up. One car had collided with another, the usual. I was about ready to get out and walk when my eye caught sight of something in the shrubbery off to the grass bank of the far lane on my left side. I was in the middle lane, so I had to peek over the car beside me to get a better look. I didn't know what it was. I squinted my eyes and tried to focus. I couldn't make it out. The sun was blinding me, and the car to my left was still blocking my view. Suddenly the traffic started to move and the car pulled forward, allowing me seconds to see before the next car blocked it too. I wish I hadn't been looking. I could see it clearly now. It was a face. It just stared. It was smiling at me. Through the bushes, suddenly the lips of the face began to move. Its mouth started to open. The sound of a horn startled me. The traffic in my lane was now moving again. I placed my hand up to apologize and moved my car along. Fortunately, my lane was moving at a steady pace. I took another look to my left towards the face. It wasn't there anymore. An hour later, the traffic had come to another standstill. I pulled the handbrake and sat back, letting out a deep sigh of frustration. I had thought constantly about the face. I rationalized that it must have been a joke, some stupid prank that kids were playing on passing cars. They would be arrested soon. Good. I pulled out a fizzy drink that I had been keeping in my glove box and started to sip. The time was now almost 7:30, and the sky had begun to darken as the sun set. I wouldn't be home for at least another 30 minutes. It was getting ridiculous. I looked to my left, then my right. It seemed as though every lane but the one I was in was moving at a steady pace. I was pissed. As I gazed out into the left lane, my heart stopped. I saw it. Again. This time, it wasn't just a face. It was a figure. A standing figure, but with the same smiling face. I swallowed hard, unable to look away. How was this possible? I had just driven an entire hour away from them before. Had they quickly pulled into a car and followed me? If so, how? And why? I began to realize that I couldn't make out if this person was a man or a woman. They looked like both, and neither at the same time. It was hard to make out any features given their distance to my car, and my vision being constantly blurred by the traffic passing by. The only thing I could make out properly was its mouth. As if finishing from where it left off before, it began opening its mouth. Its head started to shake. I continued staring for what felt like forever. Eventually I shifted my eyes to the other drivers. None of them, I noticed, were paying attention to the person. Was I the only one who could see them? My focus went back onto the figure. They were still in the same spot, mouth open, head shaking. Then it suddenly hit me. They were screaming. I pressed my electric window roller button down slowly. I shouldn't have. Even over the sound of the blaring traffic, I could hear the sound it made, an agonizingly deep rumble which resonated from the back of its throat. It was screaming with no filter. I was freaked out. Despite my surroundings of all these vehicles, it seemed that I was the only person that this figure was looking at, and I was the only person that could see them. The traffic in my lane started to move, and my God, was I glad it did. I hadn't rolled my window back up as I pulled the car into gear. I took one look back at the person. They were less than a foot away from my car, and they weren't screaming anymore. They were smiling again. I panicked, accelerating the car forward as fast as I could. I swerved into the right lane, realizing that I couldn't get away fast enough if I stayed in the middle. My heart pounded as I narrowly missed the bumper of the car in front of me and forced a car behind me to perform an emergency brake. Several cars honked their horns in disgust, wondering just what the hell I was doing. I took off down the right lane and didn't look back. As I write this, it has been 2 days since the incident. I quit my job. I'm never going back onto that motorway. Never again. And if you do end up traveling down it, look out for the shrubbery. And don't